Welcome back to the channel, you guys. This is your girl, Wicked Raider 22, wrapping up another week of full gameplay and picking up actually with the series that we started a little while ago. Taking a look at rare champions that so far I've actually had the privilege of either pulling from shards or earning through campaign or what have you. So if you're looking for the videos that cover Banner Lords and High Elves, it's already up. Those are sandwiched together. These tend to run a little long, so I can normally get through 2 factions per video. I'll be honest though, in this, I guess, Galen pact, I can probably go through all 4 of these in this particular video, but we'll see how we do on time. Sacred Order and Barbarians is going to be the second follow-up in that series, and here we are 3 videos in. So you guys have probably had time to play. Of course, new content has dropped, and I will certainly be doing a follow-up. I do have a Ronda video for beginners coming out pretty soon. That'll be uploaded this week as well. So finishing up just a couple of thoughts. I've had a chance to pull her action on more than one account, and the experience has been a little bit different, but I certainly want to hear from the community. What do you guys think? How are you feeling? And so we will get into that. But let's go through rare champions. It is something that we're all going to be pulling. For every mystery shard, every now and then you get that nice little blue light that pops up. And there are, of course, some rare champions that are still account changers. So we're going to start with the Ogryn tribe. For most of us, the Ogryn tribe is actually one of those areas where experience is kind of a hit and miss. So I do have, and I have pulled a couple of epic champions, but we are here for the rares. And I'll be honest, guys, you're going to hear puppies barking in the back. We are almost done with puppy managing. So a couple of days and they are going to their forever homes. So the excitement is there. So please bear with that background in case you hear it and wonder. So here, even on this free-to-play account, Rocktooth and Fury Stoker are 2 that you guys are going to pull pretty often. Honestly, I do not work with Rocktooth. I pulled this guy a couple of times. The attack one enemy, especially for that first attack, is I do like his second skill though. He does have that attack on all enemies, so increases crit rate by 15%, which you can increase that damage by 20% on a 3-turn cooldown. But honestly, there are so many champions in the game at this point. It's not always very impressive. I have seen a couple of teams that pull Rocktooth and use him in some very specific areas, but he's one of those niche champions that's not going to jump out at you right away, even when you're taking a look. 5 turns, guys. 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns can be interesting, but this champion was not a account changer for me. Let's just put it like that. Pounder. I have actually not pulled Pounder and ran him more than just to use his food. And a lot of the champions in this particular faction area, that's kind of where my issue is going to lie. Pounder is one of those, doesn't have very many reviews, and the ones that he does have, oh my, they are not that great. So pretty standard on the first skill, of course, looking at the decreased attack. If you come out, we're going to come to a system of champions that offer a freeze debuff. And it's kind of it's been a back and forth with me. You can enhance these abilities, of course, if you go in and place this champion in a free set. But honestly, this is one of those champions that even pulled looking at speed, which isn't too bad, looking at HP that's available, which isn't too bad, but the kit on this particular champion is not going to be impressive for the average. Passive is going to be Tower Power, increases the resistance of allies by 15 for each active buff on this champion. And then he has an aura, increases magic ally attack in all battles by 20%. For most of us, Pounder is not going to be a come through all the time kind of champion. So this will be a no-go for me. I would not personally build him on the account for where I stand now. Fortress Goon is another one that falls into this category. The ratings for this champion are a bit better. Of course, it still comes with the attacks one enemy on that first skill, but the decreased speed, if you do not currently have a champion that has his ability, I want you guys to kind of slow down and pay attention to as you're going through and pushing for progression. Where's your team falling behind? And a lot of times when you see like decreased speed, debuffs, I'm always kind of thinking about arena as I'm moving up. But by the time I get to the level in arena where this would be most helpful, this would not be the number one champion that I would go for. So now, I will say on the third one, Mobile Fort heals all allies by 10%. Guys, there are some much stronger healers in the game, even as rares. Apothecary, of course, is going to be there. Reliquary Tender is another one that comes to mind. There are other champions that you can definitely pull. That 5-turn cooldown, which can be brought down to a 4, still will not be as impressive as you would like, though the aura I do kind of like. Increases ally defense in dungeons by 23%. He's a champion that if you pull him early enough, you may just run him through campaign, which is how a lot of these champions end up being 3 or 4-star. But as far as resources directly building him with purpose, this champion did not make the cut for me. Wagonbane. Wagonbane is one champion that I have had a chance to pull and kind of work with. This is one of those champions that can have good purposes depending on who he is actually being surrounded with. And I'll be honest, guys, the aesthetic. It is the aesthetic. The aesthetic is pretty nice on this one. I don't know. Pretty smooth, pretty smooth. Skills are going to be straightforward and all right now. All right. We're starting to pick up a little reading time. We're doing a little inventory over here. He will attack one champion with eye blights for the first skill, has a 35% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. The accuracy appreciation is probably going to hit you guys starting around levels 45, 50 as you are starting to move up. It's not something that jumps directly out at me. He does have the continuous heal on that second skill for 7.5%. On the ally with the lowest HP for 2 turns, not impressive. And Start of Mayhem attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Really book heavy. This champion for me is one that I use as food. I've seen him 4 and 5-starred. I personally would not put those resources in. But something tells me that we may get content, guys, for some of these champions that will definitely make them more relevant in your gameplay. So don't hesitate on the first time pulling a champion, especially if you don't have a direct need for that champion right away. You may decide to vault him, but so far he's been a food candidate for me. Magma Blood. Magma Blood is a champion that many of us will run into as an enemy first. So Hurl, he is going to toss that nice little boulder, will attack one enemy, has a 15% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Coming in with Splinters, he's another one on the decreased accuracy by 50%. Attacks 2 times for his third skill as well. Now, Bomb. Bomb is one of those that you will run into more and more. I haven't seen it in a large quantity as far as a rare champion is concerned, but bombs can have a good impact. They can definitely push the damage amounts, but for this champion on a 5-turn cooldown, it's not impressive for me. Aura increases ally accuracy in dungeons by 40. And even if you're looking at the reviews, now reviews overall are going to tell you that Magma Blood has a place. Was he a game changer on the account that I pulled him on? The answer is no. I think it comes down to at what point in the game you are. Where are you campaign wise? Are you using him more dungeon? Are you trying to push deeper? I think that second and third attack would probably be most beneficial for the average account. But this is one I could not see myself 6-starring or booking this champion out. If I had to think to book or vault, I would likely place him in a vault if I pulled him again, just to see if eventually I come to a place in my account where, without a stress on my resources, I may use him in an area. But he's not going to hit my instant 5-star, 6-star, and book. Rough Stone is one. He's another one, guys. He's another one. The aesthetic. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's a thing. It's kind of given. He's trying. He's trying to do a little something there. Now, overall, I will be honest, Rough Stone is one. I have ran this champion. He's definitely helped me in a couple of dungeon areas. Whenever I just run him through campaign, it's normally just to build up those levels to be able to either 4-star him. On the 2 accounts I pulled Rough Stone on, he has never gone above 4 stars. At that point, he is normally sacrificed for someone else. But his kit is not all bad. He starts it off first skill with something that I love to see. He attacks all enemies. Straightforward. The amount of damage that this particular champion can deal is not bad at all. The other thing is you're going to notice that speed is not bad at all either. And this damage can be increased by 15%. As we're coming through on this nice little 4-turn cooldown, Tender Meat is going to attack one enemy, destroys the target's max HP by 15%. I found this particular skill helpful as I was trying to progress in various dungeons. And I'm thinking, honestly, when we are talking about Fire Knight, for example, a lot of us get to Dragon. A lot of us are coming to Ice Golem where you are really trying to push. You're pushing past levels 9, 10, 11, 12, and you start realizing level 12 to 15 in most of these dungeons is really going to push you hard to start looking at team composition. Team composition becomes more and more important as you begin to progress beyond that starting point, and now you have areas of the game that are opening for you. Guys, another area I'm definitely going to go back and do another video on just to kind of update you is Doom Tower. So Rough Stone is one of those champions. I would definitely keep him. If you don't, I can't say I will book him right away. Just kind of thinking about where my account is, but honestly, he can be a nice one to vault and build slowly if you are thinking about those areas in rare only rooms of Doom Tower. Those stages can test your patience. But for a champion such as this one, especially coming in, if you have him on a team of 5 with at least 2 to 3 other champions that are attacking all enemies for that first skill, this can be huge. If he is paired next to a reviver, he's not hard to keep alive. I definitely will give him that. And for the time that he is active on your team, he is dealing enough damage to make it worth it. So Rough Stone, I would vault him and definitely consider building him a little bit later. He is kind of niche, but can be worth it. Ogryn Jailer. Oh, guys. Now, this guy I have on a couple of accounts, and he is one, I'm going to be honest. Don't let these Some of these are a little bit lower than honestly I would think. And it kind of depends on where this champion is and when you are pulling him, like I've said with a few others before. The attention to detail is so nice. This is one of those champions that I actually used in Faction Crypts. He's been extremely helpful. He was really helpful for me in Ice Golem as well. So on the first skill, he only attacks one enemy, but has a 40% chance of removing one random buff from the target. For a while, this first skill wasn't my favorite. It's not what really sold me on this champion. Now, second skill, confiscate, attacks one enemy, has a 40% chance of stealing 2 random buffs from the target, places an extra hit if any buff is stolen. This can be helpful in dungeons. What was happening was I had champions. I had finally kind of figured out the order in which I wanted champions to lay out their skills. But the problem was sometimes your enemy is throwing so much at you at one time. I needed that cleansed. I needed that moved. I needed him or someone to pull what the enemy had that I wanted so that I could, number one, stay alive, but number two, deal more damage back. So you're trying to counterattack, but you realize that what you have as far as gear is not strong enough. Who is on your team isn't necessarily strong enough either. And so he became one of those champions that was really helpful when I simply needed a little bit more time. I needed that extra push. That's kind of what I was looking for. Now, on the 5 turn, which can be pulled down to a 4 turn cooldown, reprisal attacks one enemy, damage increases by 20% if the target has no active buffs. This third skill is where he lost a lot of points with me. And I'll be honest, this is pretty rare. On the teams and in the areas where I have ran this champion, it's not common for the enemy to have no buffs at all. It just wasn't happening. And so trying to balance out and place him on a team where that could happen a little bit more often was probably one of his weakest areas. I have 5-starred this champion before. I could definitely see taking him to a 4 or a 5-star. Would I 6-star him? I can't say I would at this point. I think Ogryn Jailer is one of those. If I pulled him and I was level, I want to say maybe the first time I pulled him, I was maybe level 35, 36. Something about your 30s, guys. I'm telling you, it kind of changes your account. And when I pulled him, he was exactly what my account needed at that time. As far as longevity, when we're talking about books, especially, longevity is not going to be his strongest suit. That account quickly outgrew his skill level. I do like him in faction crypts. I do like him in my beginning levels of Doom Tower as well. Those are areas where I wouldn't mind, keeping him, but kind of niche. Not a instant 6-star, but I would definitely vault this guy, build him slowly because he does have a few plus. And he has an aura. In the dungeon, your ally accuracy by 20. Not too much. The kit could be a little bit better. I think it started with purpose. The second skill is normally what everyone is using him for, and everything else kind of falls by the wayside. Lumberer. I am pretty sure, especially if you are a CVC kind of person, if you are pulling mystery shards on a regular basis, you guys have pulled the Lumberer before. This guy, certain areas, pretty niche. He does have a resemblance to the Ogryn Jailer for me. I have made it to a 4-star with him, but the Lumberer then became a sacrifice for another champion. We have gigantic pulverizers on this first attack. He's only attacking one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 25% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Also has a 20% chance of increasing the duration of any decreased defense debuffs. Now, second part, the ability to increase duration as your battles become longer. And I'm thinking about Clan Boss is probably one of the big ones. I'm thinking about those upper levels. When you start finally breaking over and you're hitting level 15 and above in your dungeons, when you're starting to even get to 10 and above, because a lot of people will farm levels 10, level 15. But when you're able to reach those levels, having the increased duration can be nice. He doesn't consume a large amount of books, pretty normal. Even the second skill can be brought to a 3-turn cooldown. Flatten level will attack one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. And then massive momentum is going to round us out, places a 15% increased crit damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, and then he attacks all enemies. This can be placed on a 4-turn cooldown. Would be nice, a lot better if it was a 3, but this guy is probably really a strong example of my issue with the Ogryn tribe. There are so many champions in the game at this point, so many single quote unquote nukers, so many damage dealers in general, where if you are only attacking one enemy, your kit has to be solid. It has to be solid. The decreased attack is nice. You can take this from 25% to 45%. The decreased defense is helpful. The second skill, because we're still only attacking one enemy, which I think is the biggest limitation for this champion. I can take this from a 60% chance to a 75% chance on decreased defense. But honestly, if I have champions that are stronger and faster, I will go with them. I can tell you guys now, his speed is disrespectful. It is disrespectful. No other way to say it. So this is a champion that you would definitely be working on speed with. I would be adding the attack in, kind of. You can see why you may build him and use him in very special situations, but for longevity, this guy would not make the cuts. I personally would vault at least one copy of this champion, but he did not make the 6-star list for me. Fury Stoker is one of those. I haven't worked with this guy at all. I have pulled him before, but okay. It's probably I don't think very many rare champions are going to get highly rated when it comes to Hydra. Fury Stoker is one of those classic, attacks one enemy, removes all debuffs from a target ally, heals the target by 20%. The heal increases according to the amount of debuffs that are removed. So Remedy is one of those skills that could have been a really good niche one, but I'm not feeling it. His passive, though, is kind of nice. Heals the ally with the lowest HP by 7.5%. There are champions in the game. This is higher. This heal can be critical, which is always helpful, but will not heal this champion in particular. You have a couple of champions that are healers that only heal themselves. Not very helpful. And you have a couple of healers that only heal other people, but they have a lot of, a lot of requirements to get it there. This guy for me would not be an instant 6-star. And honestly, he's not shaking me really hard to even be placed in the vaults. So I would definitely, for now, based on my account, pass on Fury Stoker. Siegebreaker. Siegebreaker is another one that you will likely pull. He is solid in a lot of areas. And guys, when we're talking about solid, I'm thinking about as you're progressing those levels 5, 10, even up to maybe 12-ish. This champion will be pretty helpful for you. He does attack one enemy 2 times. You can increase in damage. Electrocute, attacks one enemy, has an 80% chance of placing a block active skills debuff. This is something that we try to use as you're moving, for example, through waves. Sometimes it feels as though the waves that you have to go through to simply get to a boss are tougher than the boss itself. So if I can block a skill and lock that away for a little bit of time, kind of puts me in the mind of Rhonda almost, that can be helpful as well. So it allows you to kind of step back and gives your team that additional turn or 2 that it's going to need. You can get this to a 2-turn cooldown, which is probably the nicest part. The second skill was the strongest attractor for me for him. And then Heavenly Roar places a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion for 2 turns. I would have been really excited if this was placed on all of his allies. Then attacks all enemies. Has a 50% chance of decreasing the turn meter by 30% if this attack is critical. Speed is basic, so not the fastest. Defense is kind of low. This champion is one of those, your account will outgrow him pretty good. I would not 6-star Siege Breaker. I may place a copy in the vaults, but other than that, he was not an account changer for me. Flesh Eater, I don't have experience with Flesh Eater actually, and for those people who do have experience, I guess they're not too excited about it. So standard, attack one enemy with that freeze debuff. Attack one enemy 2 times. On each critical hit, decreases the target's turn meter by 15%. How often are you going to hit critically is the question. Gruesome Nourishment places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. That can be interesting, but this is not. Gruesome Nourishment being placed on a 4-turn cooldown just sunk his entire kit. Hands down. Increases ally HP and faction crits by 22%. I could definitely appreciate that. Anybody that's finally hitting those harder levels of faction crit, you guys know, the difference when you start crossing the threshold. Speed is not bad at 94, but no, this champion would not be a 6-star for me, and I would not vault. Rock Beast, I pulled a couple of times. This is one of your void champions, of course. He is getting some pretty mediocre reviews. He does attack one enemy. The provoke debuff is probably my least favorite. You guys should be pulling a couple of dupes of this particular champion by now. He does spill the turn meter by 50% and places a 60% increased defense buff on this champion for 3 turns. I like the fills the turn meter by 50%. 3-turn cooldown. I wish you were filling everybody's turn meter. A little selfish. Probably a little selfish is kind of how it's feeling. He starts reading a little bit. We're going to take Bellow down to a 4-turn cooldown, but it does attack all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn. And this is probably the best skill, to be honest. I love the AoE, of course. I also like the decreased speed. That can be pretty helpful in certain areas. So I can see why his overall ratings are probably pretty flat. He does increase, crit rate. We were doing good in arena by 16%. Guys, how often do you even hit critical in arena? The goal, honestly, I would love to be able to hit maybe 1 round and everybody's dead, just gone, done. So this champion, coming into this game, I think the expectation for void champions, whether they are rare, epic, or legendary, is so high. And I know that these are the champions you don't come across as often. So the expectation, of course, should probably be a little bit higher. But this one for me is definitely not a 6-star. He is not in my vaults. I have not taken him beyond 4 stars before using him as a feast. Bellower. By far. Probably he's high up on the list for me. This guy, Bellower, is definitely one that you will hear even veteran players talk about. He is key in Doom Tower for those rare rooms. I promise you, he is so helpful in progression within your dungeons as well. Bellower is one I did not pull for quite a while. I think I was beyond level 40 by the time I pulled Bellower. I actually did not pull void champions for quite some time. And honestly, if I had kept all of the brews that I had instead of just dumping them on other champions because they were just accumulating for what appeared to be no good reason, he's really easy to upgrade because honestly, so many of us as new players and as newer-ish players, you don't pull a lot of void champions, but you always seem to acquire quite a few brews. And so you will have 100 brews and literally no void champions. So when you finally get one, you can upgrade them and even honestly probably ascend them pretty quickly because you have potions available, you got a little bit of everything available. His reviews in most areas are going to be pretty solid, especially in faction wars, especially in the keeps. He's been pretty helpful for me. His kit wise, I love this. Always the first skill attacks all enemies. Has a 20% chance of placing a block active skills debuff. Remember this one from probably what, 2 champions ago. I said this one is pretty helpful. The good thing is rare books are much easier to come by. Always easier to book a rare champion compared to epics and most certainly compared to your legendary champions. So that makes it pretty nice as well. The other thing is, boom, the mighty bellow. Guys, second attack attacks all enemies. Has a 50% chance of placing a 15% decreased speed debuff. Did I not tell you? There are champions that are in this category that are going to have all the little pieces of kits from other champions that you like. Oh, if I could just take this one thing. Bellower is like a combination of putting together all of those skills you wish a champion had. And it's kind of where this guy falls for me. Boom! Do you see this, guys? Third skill attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. And you can place this on a 4-turn cooldown. Think about it. Bowl over attacks all enemies. Mighty Bellow attacks all enemies. Frazzle attacks all enemies. And Aura, we're hitting speed in faction crypts by 15%. Not the biggest number, but I will always take speed when I can get it. Bellower is a champion you most certainly want to 6-star. You most certainly, if you are not prepared to do that, make sure you bought this guy and you build him out when you can. This champion is a game changer for most of you. So a definite on Bellower. Gear Grinder is another one. Do not sleep on this guy. And do not allow, I promise you guys, do not allow some of the reviews to get you. Gear Grinder is one of those that I pulled, I wasn't sure about. And the first time I used him as food and I kept going. And he is a void champion. Did a little bit more research. I've been listening to those seasoned players, came back, got lucky again, pulled Gear Grinder, and I'm like, I'm going to build this guy out just to see what he does. Rare champions, not hard to kind of work with. He is HP base. Speed base sits at 95, so not too bad. Looking at his kit, on Gears of Gore, he's only attacking that one enemy. He does have the continuous heal that we've seen on a couple of champions, which it can be critical. This buff on this champion for 1 turn if his attack is critical. So, all right. Not too impressed with skill number 1. Skill 2 is where we started warming up. He heals all allies by 15% of their max HP. This can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown, and this 15 can go to 20, 25, 30, 35%. If you have not pulled an apothecary, if you have not pulled a healer, period, I have a free-to-play account, and guys, to be honest, I have not pulled a single champion from the Dark Elf faction, which is impressive. I have not pulled a single healer, not one. And when I tell you it's an account that is full of amazing nukers, which is great, but I don't even have a healer, let alone a reviver. It just blows my mind because by this point, I mean, this account is probably hitting level 40, 45 at this point. Still haven't pulled one. Have not pulled one yet. It is on the third skill. Necrocogs revives a dead ally with 50% HP and 50% turn meter. The biggest downfall to this skill is this. 7 turns, which can be brought down to a 5-turn cooldown. Guys, if you do not currently have a reviver, if you do not currently have a healer, gear grinder can slide in, especially early game, and take care of that for you. The aura, of course, is allowed in faction crypts for increased ally HP by 25%. But this is a champion, depending on where I am. Gear Grinder is for certain a 5-star champion. He would not be hard to book out. You will eventually start pulling dupes of this champion as well. I have not 6-starred him. I don't know if I would 6-star him right away because honestly, you start running with this champion and suddenly you start pulling revivers and healers left and right. Don't know what it is, kind of how it goes. But if you are like my other accounts where you just can't seem to pull a healer, Gear Grinder can certainly get the job done for you. Man, my boy Nicholas, I pulled this guy. Probably a week or so before the most recent CBC. Had not seen him. I was wondering, was he a part of the new faction? I'm like, who is this guy? Doesn't have very many reviews. And when I tell you, pretty solid. This one is a solid champion. I lucked up and pulled him on an account, and I think I was level 23, 24. Oh, beautiful. So, coming out, Vigor Spores. He attacks the one enemy, heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Also heals the ally with the lowest HP by 10%. And keep in mind, any healing that you are getting can be helpful. We go to second. Second skill, Fungal Privilege, places a shield buff on the champion for 2 turns equal to 20% of their max HP. Then places a 25% ally protection buff on all allies except for this champion for 2 turns. Will also heal all allies except this champion by 10%. So throwing shields, throwing out some ally protection, and can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. The heal can be increased by 15%. You can't beat that. Rare champion, early game. This one can certainly prove to be worth it. I'm telling you guys, when it comes to rare champions, the biggest thing that you're always pushing for, you're pushing for champions that are versatile, that are not resource intensive, who can easily hold their own weight and can allow for progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books. We're going to add 9 books. That's it. Ally defense and faction crypts by 21%. This champion proved more so to be one of those where I actually went in and reconfigured a team for this particular champion. Would I 5-star him? Definitely. Hands down. Would I bought this champion if you're not ready to start working with them and tossing a few resources at them? Most definitely. Would I run this champion with some pretty good gear, even if you're not able to book them out? Yes. Yes, I would. Many of your teams, and I've received so many DMs on this one. Guys, you can't run around with a team full of nukers. That only works for so long. Early game, that seems like the best thing ever, but I promise you, you will start hitting levels where that is no longer a viable option. You're going to need support. You are most definitely going to need some healing, some reviving. You're going to need those shields being placed. You need a good support champion. In those areas where you can only run rares, keep in mind, there are champions that you will only use when it's time to run through your rares. And Nicholas, for me, definitely a champion that I would support and I would hold on to. I'm telling you guys, the Ogryn tribe is not one of the strongest tribes, in my opinion, but Bellower, Gear Grinder, and Nicholas, these last three, Ogryn Jailer is another one, probably my top four in this group, followed by Wagon Bane and Lumberer. You can get quite a bit done. Now, when I think about my pay-to-play accounts, I'm finally hitting, I think, level 58-ish, somewhere in there, 58, 59. These bottom three, I will take them with me because I know that there are going to be areas within Doom Tower, for example, within Faction Crypt, I would absolutely need them. So thinking about resources, thinking about what you're pouring into and what you are not, I want you guys to always kind of pack that into the back of your minds. Now we're going to tackle this other one. We're going to go a little bit quicker. I know. Sometimes certain champions, certain ones, guys, just hit me. Lizardmen is another one. I struggle. I'm going to be really, really transparent with you guys. Even just looking at the legendaries, which I have none of these guys. Looking at the epics, I played with a few, and the being impressed has not quite happened yet. And looking at these rares, I'll be honest with you guys, I have only had the privilege of probably pulling and working with about 4 of these guys. I'm not impressed on the rares. The one rare in this group that I want, and I cannot seem, I've got to go back through campaign to pull to get this guy. If you have been under a rock somewhere since the new dungeon has opened, Muck Stalker is going to be your friend. And he's your friend for one big reason, because he is a holder of the sleep debuff. So that's what you've been looking for. Muck Stalker is one of those. He's a campaign farmable champion. Guys, I'm telling you now, look, Sand Devil, a 5. Everybody's kind of going for this guy. Keeping him alive is probably going to be a big one. But take a look at that speed at 101. It's not bad. If you can put him on a team where you have a cleanser, you have a reviver, and you surround him with 2 other nukers, can definitely be worth it if you can keep him alive. And I've seen it done by a couple of people so far, so I'm excited to kind of get there. So with Pounds, he's only attacking 1 enemy. He's not a champion that you're going to be building to be your supreme nuker. That's not what we're thinking about this guy for. So if you are early game, and when I say early, guys, I'm thinking level 40 and below, he is not going to be at the top of your list to build out. So off top, hitting 5 stars for early game, no. But for the newest dungeon, going back to these reviews, newest dungeon for Sand Devil's Necropolis, absolutely, when you get this champion, hold on to him. And I promise you, most of us have run campaign and we have absolutely used him for food. And now we regret it. On Strangle, he's still only attacking that 1 enemy, but he places a sleep debuff for 2 turns. The reason that so many veteran players have fallen in love with him is this skill can be placed on a 2-turn cooldown. You can't beat that. The entire point of the Necropolis dungeon is to put that particular boss to sleep so that you can add damage and you can also start repairing yourself. So that's going to be your moment. His passive with Herbal Bomb will give you the 15% continuous heal on this champion for 2 turns, helping to keep him alive, which is where your healers and revivers will come in pretty handy. And then, of course, increases ally HP and faction crypts by 22%. Muck Stalker for me as even on my free-to-play, when I go back and farm this particular champion, he will be 6-starred. only because I'm running him because of this particular skill. He's really good at it. There are a couple of other champions in that common, uncommon range that can do the same, but that sleep nice debuff is becoming more and more valuable. So definitely Monk Stalker is one of those. If you aren't going to use him right now because you haven't made it to at least level 38 to attempt the Necropolis dungeon, go ahead and vault this guy, run him through your campaign, and then come back and book him and see what he's all about. Skink. I pull Skink. I love the colors. I'm going to be honest. It's probably the only thing I love about this champion, but I definitely love the colors. But I don't know. Whenever I see a champion that has everything from 2s to 3s to some nice mid 4s, it kind of piques my interest. I have not built Skink at all. I think the 2 times I pulled this champion, I've actually like immediately used him as food and didn't think about it. So attacks one enemy, he will ignore block damage and shield buffs. I know that he doesn't put out a ton of damage. So that's the other thing. Even though the amount of damage done can be increased by 25%, Withering Poison attacks one enemy has a 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. Places a 50% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns if the target has a decreased defense debuff. The heal reduction is nice. I'll give it that. It took me a while to pull a champion that did heal reduction. As your levels increase and your boss's skill level increases as well, this can be a nice one. I'm thinking about some of the potion keeps as well, which I'm wondering if heal reduction works in potion keeps. I have to go back and look. I'm not sure. You guys know, let me know. This kid isn't jumping at me. It just doesn't. Attacks one enemy if the hit is critical. He has a heal reduction debuff that can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. And then magic ally attack in all battles by 30%. I think I like his aura more than I like anything else. Skink for me currently, based on where my account is, would not be a 6-star candidate. Gator, I have seen so many reviews and videos on Gator. And I think this is one of those champions. It comes down to the sheer disappointment in the kit overall. So this is one of those champions. He does the heal reduction by 50%. As your account progresses, you will appreciate that more and more. So the first one, Hex Smash, I can get next to. Places a 25% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns, and this can only be brought to a 3-turn cooldown. Removes all debuffs from all allies. This can be helpful. 3-turn cooldown, not bad. And then increases magic ally crit rate in all battles by 22%. Not a bad one. Not really pushing out too much damage. He is a support champion. If you have the space on your team, I mean, I would maybe 4-star him just to kind of see the synergy within the team that he's on. But Gator for me is one that went to the vault. I feel like, and there are a couple of rares, kind of like epics, I feel the same way about. I feel like there's going to be some content that specifically calls for this champion. And I know that in Faction Wars, I 100% will need more champions in Lizardmen and in the Ogryn tribe, just overall. You got to figure out pretty quickly which champions you are using as food and discarding of all the time, because those areas in your faction are not, you're not making any progress in. So for Faction Wars, I will hold on to this guy. You could definitely run them, guys, just as food and campaign, but level them up, use them in Faction Wars until you acquire a champion that does a little bit better, that is in the same faction preferably. But Gator for me was not an instant 6-star, but I will bought this champion and revisit him later. Oh, I'm sorry. Now y'all know we got to go back. What is in home skillets? Oh, that is a skull. Okay. Just wondering what was on the back right there. I never really paid attention to that one. Slitherbrute. Slitherbrute is giving me, all right, Tail, I see you. And it's giving me the colorful vibes. I have not had this champion, but some people are loving this guy. Let's see what he does. All right, we have a decreased speed debuff. So attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. On the second attack, Essence Snatch, still attacking that one enemy, steals 1 random buff for them. Punish Hubris, attacks one enemy, decreases the target's turn meter equal to the amount of the buffs on the target. Now that can be different. Actually, that can be kind of intriguing. 4-turn cooldown, kind of took a little of the shine and glory off of it. But this could be interesting only depending on if you have a team member that is absolutely tossing out buff after buff. Oh. Is it they? I want to give some credit. Of course, he increases accuracy in dungeons by 40. Yeah, Slitherbrute for me would not be an instant build. This would have to be a champion. I think I just randomly discovered that he was pretty good, but not instant build for me. Not really vaultable for me. Bogwalker is another one. This guy is not vaultable at all for me. The books are one thing. He does a decreased attack, which can be nice. He does attack all enemies, places a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. But once again, this can be placed on a 4-turn cooldown. This guy is kind of book loving for a rare champion. Good thing is you're only really booking out those 2 skills. So you're looking at 13 books. Woo, 14 books, I'm sorry, because even this nice little passive, you can put it on a 3-turn cooldown to reflect damage. Reflect gear can be nice. And I would love to see if his reviews kind of, they do not reflect that. So if you pull reflex gear, or reflecting damage in particular is kind of nice, but not worth building out this particular champion. Ally HP in dungeons by 25% for the increase. This one for me is going to still be a food candidate. All right, coming around to Skullsworn. You're going to see Skullsworn within campaign, which is probably the first time or the most familiar thing about this particular champion. So he is attack based. Looking at his skills, guys, I'll be honest, the skill itself, Vicious Rip, is pretty short, but woo, that reading list is kind of long. Attacks one enemy 2 times and has a 20% chance of placing an extra hit. The amount of damage this champion puts out does not warrant this getting excited over. Not at all. Not at all. Cry for Blood places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns. Also places a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. And we can take this down to a 4-turn cooldown. I would love to see this skill, even if it didn't change. I can probably think of a couple of other champions if this was the case. If this was something that was kind of weaved into the kit, even if some of your campaign farmable champions, that would be nice. But with Skullsworn, I haven't seen where this is most beneficial. And so I love the buffs, but it's not enough, not quite enough. Feral Hunter will fills this champion's turn meter by 15% on critical hits, fills this champion's turn meter by 50% if this champion kills an enemy. This hardly ever happens with this champion. Hardly. I believe I've made it to a 4-star with him, and then he has become food. An aura that only works in faction crypts for increasing ally speed by 13%. This guy would not make my 6-star list. He did not make the vault. And so whenever I pull him, he is still a food for me. Hurler is another one. Hurler Actually, I started seeing him more and more from progression from lower arena to the little midish area where I am now. And this is one, the books aren't horrible. Same, attacking that one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 25% chance to ignore defense by 50%. Second skill, attacks one enemy, removes one random buff from the target, fills his champion's turn meter by 30%. That damage can be increased by 25%. Pin down on that third skill, attacks one enemy, puts the target's skills on cooldown. I love this skill. It always makes me think of like a Madame Ceres, for example. It makes me think of a couple of other champions that almost like a, not Madame Ceres. I'm getting like a Diabolus feel as far as like the crowd control of it all, but he just doesn't do it as well. I get that he's a rare champion, and I know that's the one thing you have to always tell yourself. Rare champion, it's on a 5-turn cooldown, which that definitely takes it out of contingencies for so many of our teams, but it has potential. It would be nice if it was an attack all enemies, but hey, you get what you get. The aura is going to be increased ally attack on dungeons by 21%. That 21% isn't bad, but this star, this champion, I did not 6-star, and I have not bought it so far. Flinger, I recently did went through a video for Flinger. Flinger is one of those, it's pretty faction war specific, unfortunately. Quite a few of these Lizardmen, honestly, a lot of people only build them out for faction wars. So axe throw, there is a decreased defense debuff. There's a 40% chance of tossing that out. You can increase the damage on that one by 30%. Meteor level is nice. It does attack all enemies. Does a decent amount of damage. Nothing to really write home about. And then burn level, attacks one enemy. The skill always inflicts a critical hit if he is built for it. The problem is, how often does that happen? How often? Speed is 104. I have no complaints on speed. I feel like you could almost build him and gear him up, but guys, again, once you have this champion, you will likely have other champions that just do more, do it better, and do it faster. Not a 6-star build. Slasher is another one. Only a handful of reviews. This guy's making a really low splash, but Slasher is attacks one enemy on the front side. He is not going to be the biggest damage dealer that you pull by far. Chop apart, where we have that decreased defense debuff for 2 turns at 30%. Attacks one enemy 2 times, and this can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. Killing Zeal. Now, Killing Zeal on a 4-turn cooldown places a 15% increased crit rate buff and a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns. The value of shield is proportional to this champion's defense and critical damage, and he grants an extra turn. I like Killing Zeal. It would be nice, of course. Everybody loves crit rate. We would love for it to be higher than 15%. But the one book that it requires goes instantly to cooldown. He doesn't require a lot of books at all. 4 on the first one, 4 on the second one, 1 there. So 9 books total. The issue that I ran into, he does have an aura for ally attack and faction crypts by 17%. For this particular champion, I can't figure out, or I have not figured out just yet, how well he's going to scale. I find that when I'm going in to build teams, and even when I'm trying new teams, Slasher never holds the position on the team for very long. I would love the skill to be placed on a couple of different champions. Of course, we always love the fact when it goes not to a 4-turn cooldown to a 3-turn. And I think the way the game is kind of, lending itself and moving into the new year, anything that's not hitting a 3-turn cooldown, the impact just falls off really, really drastically, unless you will, lasting for more and more turns. Now, the good thing is you will notice the shield buff for this on this champion will last for 2 turns. If you bring this down to a 4-turn cooldown, it's not a huge amount of break without being able to go back to the skill. But would it make it worth it? Is it going to be 9-book worthy? Is it mastery worthy? Is it 6-star worthy? The answer would be no. Metal Shaper. Metal Shaper is one. This guy has always been food for me. I've gone through, kind of looked at the shields, and you have to level this champion up in order to truly get the most out of this champion. I haven't seen the joy in it. Even the 3rd skill is on a 4-turn cooldown. These reviews, I definitely agree with. So Metal Shaper for me is a no-go. No 6-star, no books. Let's keep it going. Ooh, how do we say this? High respects. High respects. We'll go with it. We'll go with it. I know you guys will give me a phonetic layout in the comments if I happen to get it wrong. I have not pulled this champion, actually. So, all right. Okay. We kind of basic solid in a couple of areas. Let's see about this kit, though. Infected Liver. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 15% chance of placing a 2.5% poison debuff for 4 turns. The 2.5%. You can increase the buff debuff chance by 20%, increase the amount of damage by 20%. There are champions that certainly do it better. If there's so many champions that will certainly outdo the 2.5%. So 2.5 is a no-go. Sign of Swiftness fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, places a 15% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. This can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. This is a lot better. Now, Sign of Swiftness is one. Oh, I couldn't imagine if this was his first skill, since he is a support champion. That may be kind of nice. But the skill's a little bit better. And then Fate's Reweave revives a dead ally with 30% HP, so the weaker version, and then it fills their turn meter by 30% on a 5-turn cooldown. The cooldown is a little excessive. We run across champions that actually, I'm thinking about Gear Grinder in particular, that will not only revive a dead ally with 50% of their HP, but also hits their turn meter, or shields. There are other champions, there are other revivers. If you pull this guy and you don't have one, he may certainly be the champion you start with. I think most of our accounts would outgrow his skill and kit level pretty quickly. I would not 6-star champion. I would definitely hold on to him long enough to pull another champion that does what he does a little bit better. So not necessarily vault worthy, but if I can come in and run him 4-star, 5-star before pulling another champion, I certainly would do that. Cage Bound. Oh, okay. I see you, Cage Bound. Cage Bound only has 50 reviews. Wow. Okay. This little guy is pretty solid, it appears. Very simple kits. Twisted Spike is going to attack one enemy, places a shield buff on this champion for 1 turn, equal to 10% of their max HP. Now, we've seen the shield buff before. We've definitely seen the percentage higher than 10. So he's coming with that weak shield. Not bad. Damage can be increased by 20% because he is defense-based, so would not be hard to keep alive, especially with the 95 speed. Sword Break Cage attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown, damage increased by 10%, and then the buff chance can be increased by 25%. Not bad, especially for a rare. Guys, keep in mind across the board, Rare Champion is going to hit a little bit different. And I actually just noticed that he is a void champion. Last but not least, Bound to Serve places a 25% ally protection buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. Also has a 15% continuous heal buff on this champion for 1 turn. And this is the best part. The skill can be placed on a 3-turn cooldown. Ally protection, guys, if you're ever wondering, having that particular buff in place where you have just that little bit of extra boost, that little extra coverage can definitely make the difference. When it came to Ice Golem, because gosh, that is one boss that smacks. But when it came to Ice Golem, to be honest, it was nice to have those champions that were continuously throwing out the protection. It was nice to have those support champions in place. It was nice to have a reviver that could not only defend themselves, but could also protect themselves and protect at a certain point, they're carrying your team. Because without them, that team would not survive the waves alone. So this particular champion, Cage Bound, I haven't seen him anywhere either, but definitely a weaker version of some of the epics, I'm pretty sure, and a couple of the rares you guys will pull that will do similar things. Now, he's a unique one. I would probably vault this champion. Honestly, I think I will vault him. I certainly would run him if I was just running campaign with food champions. I would toss him in there just to build his level, and I may actually pull him out to see what he does. He should be vital though, especially in Faction Wars. He could be pretty helpful, honestly, in some of the rare rooms, really, because you're bringing down all of his skills to a 3-turn cooldown. I wonder if we're sleeping on Cage Bound a little bit. I like that his kit is pretty simple, it's straightforward. His base speed is not hard to work with. I like the fact that his defense, all defense-based champions are normally much, much easier to keep alive. And imagine if he was on a team with another support champion. That would be kind of nice. Because at that point, not only would he be healed by others, and they're healing the remainder of the team, he's also helping the remainder of the team as well. So you couldn't beat that one. Cage Bound is one I would vault if I wasn't prepared to work with him. But this guy, I would probably build out, definitely take him to a 5-star level, put some decent gear on him, and run him just to kind of see what happens. So if I pull Cage Bound, guys, I could definitely see that one. Did you hear the excitement? Did you hear the excitement at all? Guys, Skinner for me, with his attack one enemy 3 times, attack one enemy and removes 2 random buffs. I know he's uncommon, but I've got to hit this guy because we pull him so much. This is like my most popular food champion. I have so many accounts where I think this guy takes up at least 8 or 9 slots because I keep pulling him over and over again, and I cannot explain why. But Skinner, food champion all the way. So many of these guys, hard skill stalker, the same way. Saurus is not. If you haven't pulled this guy, or when you pull this guy again, I'll be honest, don't let this fool you. Don't. I know the reviews are kind of rough, but he's niche. He really is. He serves a purpose, guys. Do a little research on Saurus. I'm going to be honest. I love the fact that he attacks all enemies. It's nice to have uncommon champions that do this. Sister Militant is another champion, attacks all enemies. That's all she does all day long. When you are progressing and just trying to get through, these are the champions that will come in clutch for you. The other thing is he attacks all enemies 2 times. He's one of those guys. Don't sleep on Saurus. I know this is a rare video, but I've got to get it in. Don't sleep on him. Has a 10% chance of placing a 50% heal reduction debuff for 1 turn. Places a 50% heal reduction debuff if the target's current HP is less or equal to 40%. And trust me, happens all the time. This guy is not hard to book with dupes. You will absolutely have enough. You can find him in the marketplace as well. I probably could do a whole breakdown video on this little guy. Highly underrated, definitely has a purpose. And I know that my newbies, my beginners, my level 20 and below, you guys keep running to him and can't figure out why. Keep this champion. Keep at least one copy of this champion. I promise you, you will find so many purposes for him later on. Okay, I'm off the soapbox. I'm off of it. I'm off of it. So this video has gone long enough, so long, so long. So we're going to average really 2 factions per video just moving forward, guys. I'm going to try to get skinwalkers and orcs done so that I can come to my absolute second favorite, if not favorite faction, because those that fall under the corrupted have a special place in my heart. And I want to get to this bottom section as well, because I certainly have some interesting picks that fall into these categories. But it was nice kind of starting with the Galen pack. Nice to get the Ogryn tribe and Lizardmen done. Again, guys, if you do not have a clan, we have slots available. Would love to have you. Type in 22WK. Come join the fun. We could certainly use it. Our last push in CBC was a hard one. We weren't successful. So many of my clan members, oh, they did awesome. Put up awesome numbers. But I couldn't open Rhonda quick enough. I had a couple of accounts that I had missed some days logging in. And so, of course, the day after CVC is over, a few of them were ready. But join the fun, join the clan. If you have not subscribed and you have stuck around for this long, go ahead and hit that subscription button. I always love talking to you guys, reaching out, and let me know who's your favorite in the Ogryn tribe. Who's your favorite with Lizardmen? Who are we sleeping on? Whose kid did I not do justice? Because I know you guys have some tips for me. So toss them my way. The next one in the series, of course, will be Skinwalkers and Orcs. If you have a favorite that fall in any of these factions, let me know why they're your favorite, where you're using them, and we will definitely take a look at those recommendations as well. So I'm going to end this video here, and happy gaming.